Hello and welcome to Sipz and Stories. My name is Elizabeth, and in today's video I will be doing my countdown of my top 10 favorite Hercule Poirot mysteries by Agatha Christie. I was inspired to make this video because I recently finished the series, all 33 books, and the very last book that I read was Curtin, Poirot's Last Case. And I also recently read Lucy Worsley's fantastic biography of Agatha Christie called Agatha Christie, an Elusive Woman, which I highly recommend as well. So grab your favorite beverage as I discuss Agatha Christie and Hercule Poirot. So as I said, I recently read Lucy Worsley's fantastic biography called Agatha Christie, an Elusive Woman. I listened to it on audiobook and I really enjoyed it. I think having read all of her mysteries, I never really knew very much about Agatha Christie herself. She was kind of the biggest mystery for me. But now that I've read Lucy Worsley's book, I realized that so much of Agatha Christie is in these books. The travel, the glamour, the houses, the people that she knew in real life. And so learning about her history just makes the stories that much more fun and more interesting. Also, Agatha Christie was just really ahead of her time. She is still to this day one of the best-selling authors of all time. I think there is 2 billion books in print or something like that, 66 novels, 14 short story collections, and countless plays, including The Mousetrap, which is the longest running play in West End history. I've personally seen The Mousetrap. It is also a lot of fun. If you're ever in London, you've got to go see it. At the end, they swear you to secrecy to not reveal the murderer. It's just so much fun. And everything that Agatha Christie represents is just not only this unique world of the wars, between World War I and World War II, but just kind of the emancipation of women at that time too. I think there is a reason why Agatha Christie's books are still popular today with feminists like myself, is that she created a lot of fantastic female characters. And one thing that Lucy Worsley does point out in the book is that Poirot himself could be thought of as the alter ego to Agatha Christie, that he does really represent the female mind. And I just never really thought of that before, and it's true. A lot of Poirot's characteristics are feminine characteristics. Poirot is a very feminine character. And for the longest time I thought, maybe Poirot was gay, he's not married, he's very fussy, he likes to dress well. But until Lucy Worsley kind of came up with that interpretation that no, this is just Agatha Christie trying to tell the stories through the perspective of a woman. But in the early 1900s, she couldn't really make a woman her main detective until Miss Marple comes along. But I just thought that was really interesting. It just made me think of the Poirot novels in an entirely different and new way. And again, I love this biography, and I really do love Lucy Worsley's very feminist perspective of Agatha Christie's life and the times that she lived in. So altogether, there are 33 Poirot novels and over 50 short stories, and I think there are a couple plays featuring Poirot as well. This collection by William Morrow features all 50 short stories. It's really great. I highly recommend it. I'll be honest with you, I have not completely finished the short stories. I have finished the 33 novels, but again, if you're looking to break into Poirot, this is a nice place to start as well. At number 10 is The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie. I love this one. This is not only the very first Poirot novel, but the very first novel that Agatha Christie ever had published, which makes it really special. She originally finished the book in 1916, but she didn't get it published until the 1920. So 4 years she waited to have this one published. And you can really tell when you read it, it does feel the most like a novel. Has really great details, good plot structure. The mystery is really solid. In fact, I do think one of her publishers kind of made her rewrite the ending to it. So it feels very precious, like she did spend a lot of time on this one. That being said, it's just really good. It isn't my favorite Poirot, though. I think a lot of the Poirots that I'll be mentioning today are a lot stronger than The Mysterious Affair at Styles, but it is still a very good book. It's a closed room mystery. It takes place in this house called Styles where all these guests are staying, and it is the first book to feature Captain Hastings and Poirot. So Captain Hastings is a young soldier that's just returned from World War I. He's staying at Styles, and then he meets up with this retired detective named Poirot, who is a Belgian refugee. And that was very typical at the time. Lucy Worsley points out that there were a lot of refugees in England at the time, shortly after the war. Really great book, really autobiographical. I am going to cheat a little bit and include Curtin in my number 10 pick as well, because if you know these books, you know that they're kind of two halves of the same whole. Mysterious Affair at Styles is the first book in the series, and Curtin is the last book in the series. Curtin also takes place at Styles. It just takes place 30 years into the future. So Captain Hastings is like now in his 60s. He's retired. His wife has passed away. His daughter is one of the main suspects in Curtin. And Poirot is very old. Poirot is at death's doorstep. His doctor has only given him a few months to live. His heart is about to go out at any minute, but he still has enough gray cells left to solve one more mystery, and it's fantastic. Lucy Worsley did teach me something that I did not know, and that is that Agatha Christie actually wrote Curtin a long time before she wrote a lot of the other Poirot novels, that she finished it in the 1930s and that she put it in a bank in the safety deposit box in case anything happened to her. It was there, it was ready to go for her family and for her fans, and she put it in her will that if anything ever happened to her, that Curtin was at the bank in the safety deposit box. So I thought that was really interesting. That Agatha Christie kind of knew what was going to happen to Poirot at the end of his life. And again, I'm cheating a little bit and calling both books my top 10 favorite Poirot mystery. At number 9 is Mystery of the Blue Train. I really love this one, and I am in disagreement with a lot of critics on this one, including Agatha Christie herself, who considered The Mystery of the Blue Train as one of her weakest novels. And the reason a lot of people agree is because it probably has one of the weakest plot structures. So Agatha Christie kind of just got this one out quickly for her publishers when she was going through that divorce. And for that reason, I don't think she had the time to kind of rework the mystery and make it as tight as she probably wanted to make it. But that's not why I really love it. I really like The Mystery of the Blue Train because it represents the other side of Agatha Christie, which I love, and that is just all the glamorous characters, all the travel in the 1920s and the 1930s. So if you're like me, and if that's half the reason you read Agatha Christie novels is just because of the glitz and the glamour, I think you will enjoy The Mystery of the Blue Train because it has that in abundance. It also has very strong female characters, which is another thing, again, that I don't think Agatha Christie gave herself enough credit for. But in hindsight, from our modern perspective, she really just had a unique way of creating these strong, independent female characters, including one of my favorite heroines, Catherine Grey. So the story is very fun. It takes place with an American heiress on this famous blue train from Paris to Provence. And one of the main suspects is Catherine Grey. And the reason I love Catherine Grey is she is this woman in her 30s who has been poor and kind of a spinster her whole life, and she inherits all of this money. And so for the first time in her life, she has the ability to do anything she wants, go anywhere she wants, and she's actually a very beautiful, glamorous young woman, and Poirot just really takes a shine to her, takes her under his wing, but she does become one of the main suspects in this murder mystery. Another favorite character of mine is Lennox, and Agatha Christie rarely writes about children or teenagers, but Lennox is a teenager, and I think she's loosely related to Catherine Grey, like a cousin or something. But I just love the relationship between Catherine Grey and Lennox and Poirot as they're trying to solve this murder mystery, and they're just kind of like hanging out in this villa in the Mediterranean on the French Riviera. So I really like this one, and again, I think if you are a fan of Agatha Christie's glitz and glamour, you'll like this one as well. At number 8 is Sad Cypress. And again, this is one of my favorite ones because it features another very strong female character, Eleanor. And what I like to do is I like to read the books, and then I like to go back and watch those old TV shows starring David Suchet. And no other person is Poirot, in my opinion, except David Suchet. So, you know, Kenneth Branagh tries, but nah, Poirot is David Suchet. David Suchet is Poirot to me. But again, I really enjoy that adaptation of Sad Cypress as well. I just think the actress that plays Eleanor just like really nails it. But the reason I love this one so much is that it does feature a love triangle. And Agatha Christie was really, really good at doing love triangles because she herself experienced a very, very painful divorce with her first husband, Archie. He came to her in her late 30s and basically told her, look, I want a divorce. I've met this other woman. She's younger, she's prettier, and I'm going to marry her instead. So obviously that was devastating for Agatha Christie. A lot of people believe that this experience caused Agatha Christie's disappearance, where she famously disappeared for 11 days. Her car was found in a ditch, and then she went to this hotel and pretended she was this other woman. I personally think that she probably had like a nervous breakdown. Fortunately for us as her readers, she took those experiences and she put them into the plots of her novels. And so, as painful as it probably was on a personal level, I just really think that's why she came up with so many of these genius plots. And Sad Cypress is an example of that. It's a love triangle novel. It's about this woman, Eleanor, and her fiance, Roddy, and they go to see this rich old relative, this rich old aunt that's going to leave them all this money. And when they get there, their aunt has this like girl companion, like this younger girl companion that's living with her, and her name is Mary Gerard. And you guessed it, of course, Roddy falls madly in love with Mary Gerard, and Eleanor is devastated, like she's completely heartbroken. And so again, I think that was just some catharsis for Agatha Christie herself. And so what happens is someone's murdered, obviously. Eleanor does become the main suspect, so I don't think that's a spoiler too much. And you just so feel for Eleanor. And you know, the whole time you're like, did she do it? Like yeah, she probably did it. But no, she couldn't have done it. And you just feel for her. And it starts off when Eleanor is on trial for murder. So again, you learn that right at the beginning, but it's such a good book. I love it. I don't care what the critics think. Sad Cypress is by far one of my favorite Poirot mysteries. At number 7 is Evil Under the Sun. And I think Evil Under the Sun is just one of those Poirots that will just satisfy everybody. People like me that love relationships and human psychology, and then mystery lovers, people that are very adamant that the mystery be good, that it be well structured, well plotted. I think you'll really enjoy Evil Under the Sun. This one is about Poirot. He is on holiday. He's staying at a seaside resort, and this very beautiful young actress and her husband come to stay. And this actress is having this affair, this very public affair, with another man that's staying at the resort with his wife. And they're just having this affair right in the open, like they're hanging out together, they're down at the beach together, and just the whole hotel, like everyone that's staying at the hotel, including the actress's husband and the man's wife, know exactly what's going on. And Poirot is just like sitting there on vacation watching this and going like, oh man, this is bad. Like something bad's gonna happen. There's evil here under the sun. Sure enough, someone is killed. And again, you know, it's probably not hard to figure out who's killed, but there are just multiple suspects in this one. Multiple people who had reason to kill this person, and it's a lot of fun. It's also very well structured. Time is very important in this novel, so Poirot basically has to go back and reconstruct the whole day when the murder takes place, and so he has to interview like multiple people and figure like, where were you when this happened? And where were you when this happened? And it's really, really good. I love this one. There's a lot of red herrings, a lot of subplot in this one. It's just really one of the best Poirot novels of all time. Number 6 is also another personal favorite of mine. I think a lot of people love this one too, and that is Peril at Inhouse. I love Peril at Inhouse. It was a lot higher in my list until I read some of these other books, and then it kind of fell to the number 6 spot, but I just have a soft spot for Peril at Inhouse. It's just one of my favorites. I think if you only ever read like Peril at Inhouse, it's still a really great read. It is as close, I think, as Agatha Christie got to describing that whole world of the bright young things. So it does feel a lot like reading like The Great Gatsby or reading something by Evelyn Waugh or Nancy Mitford. It just kind of describes that like party lifestyle of the drinking and the drugs of the 1920s really well. This one, again, Poirot is on vacation. This time he is with Captain Hastings. So I really enjoy when Captain Hastings and Poirot are together. It just makes the books that much more special. And he's staying at this beautiful seaside resort, and they're having breakfast out on the patio, and they're just kind of overlooking the bay. And Poirot says, you know, who owns that beautiful house across the bay there? And one of the other guests kind of chimes in and says, oh, it's this rich young heiress named Nick Buckley. And sure enough, Nick Buckley shows up, and she comes to see Poirot, and she says, look, Poirot, you've got to help me. Someone's out to get me. Someone wants my money. I think someone was trying to kill me. And Poirot has such a soft spot for the young ladies, especially if they're beautiful and glamorous. And he says, of course, mademoiselle, I will take up your case. We'll figure out what's going on. And again, he just gets introduced to this whole world of Nick's life and her friends. And her friends are really mean and snarky. And again, they do drugs, they drink. I love this one. It's a lot of fun. It's very glamorous. And the scene where the murder takes place, it actually takes place during this like very glamorous party scene. So again, it kind of reminds me of The Great Gatsby in that respect. But yeah, I love Peril at Inhouse. One of my favorites. At number 5 is, you guessed it, is Five Little Pigs. And I didn't really plan it this way. It just happened to work out that Five Little Pigs was my number 5 pick. But again, this is one of the ones that like bumped Peril at Inhouse down. Five Little Pigs is one of the last Poirot novels I ever read. I think I read it last year or the year before, definitely during the pandemic. And I remember finishing and going, dang, that was good. That was just so good. It just has one of the most satisfying endings in all the Poirot novels. It actually has one of the best plot structures of all the Poirot novels as well. It's the cold case. I really love it. And that's one thing about Agatha Christie that I really appreciate, is that she was not afraid to experiment with different plots. Because she was a mystery writer, she had to be creative and she had to think outside of the box. And I think that's what made her such a terrific writer in the first place, is she was just always coming up with new ideas and new ways to tell a story and to tell a mystery. Sometimes that didn't work. If you know Agatha Christie, you know that a lot of her books were kind of bad. There are a lot of Poirot books that are bad. The ones that come to mind are probably The Halloween Party. That's just not good. The Third Girl, it's not great. Like a lot of her later ones. The Big Four, I don't know what was going on in the Big Four, but the Big Four is really bad. So that's what makes me appreciate books like Five Little Pigs so much more, is because it is an experiment of Agatha Christie's that really paid off, where she just kind of did a home run. She hit it out of the park with this one. This book takes place with Clara Crail, and Clara Crail is another beautiful, rich young heiress in her 20s. And she comes to Poirot and she says, look, she says, 20 years ago, my mother was accused of killing my father and she was sentenced to death. She was convicted, she was found guilty and sentenced to death. As far as the world is concerned, this case is closed. But before she died, mother wrote me this letter, and she told me in so many words that she kind of didn't do it, but to let this go. She asked Poirot, look, I cannot move on with my life. I'm about to get married myself. I just can't not move forward until I know what really happened to my parents. Will you look into this for me? And if you discover that my mother really killed my father, I'll let it go. I'll just put this to rest once and for all. And Poirot says, of course, I'll take this on. There's a good chance that your mother did kill your father, but I'll look into this. So he goes back and he starts interviewing all 5 people that were there the day that her father died. And her father was this really famous artist. And so all these 5 people have a motive for killing the father, and they tell Poirot what happened that day, and they all tell their version of the story. That's why I think it's so interesting, because I think that is so true to life. I think when an event happens, multiple people can have multiple different perspectives of the exact same event that reflects their own unique perspective and their own emotions that they were feeling at the time. It's really, really good. And you get to see where these people were 20 years ago versus where they are now. And a lot of them have become really rich and really famous. And again, I love this one so much. It's just one of my favorite Poirots. Number 3 and number 4, I also flip-flop a little bit. But for the sake of this video, I'll just say at number 4 is the ABC Murders. This is another universal favorite of everyone. I love the ABC Murders. I think it's a lot of fun because it's the most dramatic of all the Poirot novels. It's the most public of all the Poirot novels because it's about a serial killer. And most of these stories, they kind of take place behind closed doors, or they're very private affairs with certain families and certain places. But this one is about a serial killer, so it's a very public murderer, and everyone's reading about it in the newspaper. The reason this one is so good is because this killer is this very sadistic serial killer that starts taunting Poirot and Scotland Yard with all these letters. And they say, look, the first victim is going to be found in a town that starts with an A, and the first letter of their name is going to start with an A. And sure enough, that's what happened. You know, Scotland Yard rushes to the murder scene, and the murderer leaves this ABC railway guide right next to the victim's body as kind of like to taunt them. Second murder happens again in a town that starts with a B. The victim's name starts with a B, and then so on and so forth. And it's just really good. Inspector Japp calls up Poirot and he says, look, you got to help us with this before this person kills half of England. This is really an embarrassment to Scotland Yard. And Poirot's like, sure, I've got this. I'll help you figure it out. There's probably an explanation to what's going on here. It's just a really fun one. There are a lot of red herrings in this one, a lot of suspects, as you can imagine, because it's multiple victims and multiple murders. And it's just a lot of fun. Even though it's about a serial killer, it's just a really fun book. I also love this one because it features three of my favorite characters. It features Poirot, Captain Hastings, and Inspector Japp. And Agatha Christie rarely wrote about them in the novel format. She usually writes about them in the short stories. So I think that's what makes this one even more fun, is that it has all three of my favorite characters in it. Yeah, so even though it's literally about a serial killer, it's one of the best Poirot novels, and it's kind of the most fun, if that makes sense. All right, at number 3 is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And out of all of the ones I'm mentioning today, this is the one I'm just gonna zip it, shut up about, not say too much, because I would hate to spoil it for anyone that has not read this book, because it's fantastic. It deserves to be in the number 3 spot. A lot of critics might say it's like one of her best mysteries, maybe her number 1 mystery. It's that good. The reason I can't say a lot about it is because it's just one of her most ingenious plots. So I just can't say anything about this one other than to just say, trust me, trust the critics. This is one of Agatha Christie's best Poirot novels, one of her best books, and by far one of the best mysteries in the mystery genre. So that's how important Murder of Roger Ackroyd is. In fact, when Agatha Christie published it, it became an instant hit. It made Agatha Christie a household name. It kind of established her as one of the prominent mystery writers of her generation. And the book is still hugely popular even today. So just, trust me, this one's good. I'm just not going to say any more about it. And for my number 2 and number 1 pick, these should come as no surprise because I'm pretty much in universal agreement with everyone else in the world on these 2 picks. And the first is Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. I love this one so much. This one really represents Agatha Christie at her best to me. I think she was just at the height of her power as a writer when she wrote this book, and I just think, again, she pulled from real life experiences in this book. Not only is it one of her best love triangle mysteries, so again, it does speak to that heartbreak of her first marriage, but it also speaks to the glamour and the adventure of her second marriage with Max, who was an archaeologist. So when she's describing Cairo and Egypt, Agatha Christie really went there. Agatha Christie traveled very extensively throughout the Middle East because her husband was an archaeologist. And so you just see a lot of that glitz and glamour again in Death on the Nile. And again, a lot of Agatha Christie's books can be very well adapted for the stage and for the screen. I don't know if she did that on purpose, but Death on the Nile just feels like she wrote it to be a movie, which is why there have been so many movies made about it, why there have been so many radio plays about it. It's just one of her best books. I'm sure many of you have seen that new movie starring Kenneth Branagh as Poirot. He also directed those movies. Again, I think he captures the glitz and the glamour of Agatha Christie's world perfectly. I mean, the casting in that movie, Gal Gadot and Emma Mackey and just all the people that were in that movie was fantastic. Although I don't know how you can have a movie with French and Saunders and Russell Brand and just not use their talents. But yeah, I was a little bummed that French and Saunders weren't more fun in that movie. But again, it was a lot of fun, and I think it's great that these movies that have come out recently are introducing a whole new generation of people to Agatha Christie and Poirot. But what makes this book so special? Again, that love triangle plot is so fantastic. Again, I don't think Agatha Christie ever could have wrote this if she hadn't experienced it herself. So much of this book does feel like catharsis for her. And just the character of Jacqueline is probably one of my favorite characters in all of the Poirot mysteries. This book is about a young woman named Jacqueline who is madly in love with her boyfriend Simon, and they want to get married. And she goes to see an old friend of hers named Lynette. And she says, Lynette, I'm just madly in love with this guy, Simon. We want to get married, but he doesn't have a lot of money, so we can't really afford to get married. You're rich. Do you have a job for Simon? Is there anything he can do for you? Can he be a business manager? Can he work for your house? Can he be a gameskeeper? Anything. You know, he'll be a gardener. Anything that you can do for him. And then Lynette says, sure, I'll give him a job. And she gives him a job, all right. She just steals him from Jacqueline and marries him herself. So it's just devastating. Like right at the beginning of the book, you're like, oh man, like I hate Lynette. I hate Simon. How could they have been so cruel and done that to poor Jacqueline? Then it fast forwards to Lynette and Simon's honeymoon. And they're on this cruise on the Nile. And of course, Poirot is on the same cruise. And Jacqueline decides to crash the honeymoon, and it's so good. And I love the relationship between Poirot and Jacqueline. You really feel for her. I think every woman that reads this book, every man too, like everyone just feels for her. Like anyone that's experienced heartbreak, just, you know, oh man. And Poirot talks to her and he says, look, you got to let this go. You're making it worse. Like you're young, you're beautiful. Let this go. Move on with your life. Don't let this evil enter your heart. Don't let this hatred enter your heart. And Jacqueline is just so frustrated. She's like, I can't stand them. I hate her. I hate her so much. And it's so good. Like, so again, that's just kind of the emotion of this book. That's what makes it so good. And again, all the suspects are fantastic. I love this one. And my number one pick is, you guessed it, Murder on the Orient Express. Another very popular movie that came out recently starring Kenneth Branagh. And again, that movie was very glamorous. It's really great. It's captured the atmosphere of the book. It just didn't capture the story. The story is so much stronger than that movie. So please, again, go back and read the book. It is by far Agatha Christie's best book, in my opinion. Not only the best Poirot novel, but I really feel it's her best book. A lot of people might disagree with me on that and say it's this one, and say that it's And There Were None, or The Crooked House, or one of her standalone novels. But I just don't care. I personally think Murder on the Orient Express is Agatha Christie's best book. It's not only a fantastic mystery, but again, the human psychology, the emotion in this book, it's so good. Like when you finish it, you just want to like burst into applause. You just want to cheer when you finish this book. I love it that much. And I don't know what else to say other than that every person should go back and read this book. Even if you've seen the movies, you'll love this. And the thing I love the most about this book is that how well researched it was. Not a lot of people know that Agatha Christie really did take a trip on the Orient Express. And while she was researching this novel, she went back and took the trip again to make sure that she had all the details correct, all the timetables, the train schedules correct, because all that is important to Poirot solving the mystery. The time of day, the train schedules, all that is super important when he goes back and he figures out who the murderer is. What is this book about? Again, like Roger Aykroyd, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it. Kind of spoiled Death on the Nile, sorry, but this one I really don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't experienced this story. I almost wish that it was erased from my mind so I could go back and reread it again. And that's kind of my opinion about a lot of Agatha Christie mysteries. I just like envy people that have not read this book yet. But what it's about is Poirot is on vacation, like in the Middle East, and he has to get home. He has to get back to England, like someone's calling him back. And he cannot find a train or a plane or anything to save his life. And so he goes to his friend who is the manager of the Orient Express, and he says, do you have any place for me? And the manager says, of course, I have a place for you, a spot for you on the Orient Express that leaves tonight. And Poirot is not supposed to be on this train, so you need to know that right from the beginning. He should not be on this train. It wasn't anticipated that he was going to be on this train until the last minute. He doesn't know that he is on the train with a murderer. And it's fantastic. It's so, so good. Another reason I love this book so much is that it is very cosmopolitan. So just like Death on the Nile, I think the reason everyone loves this is how cosmopolitan it is. A lot of the characters are American as well, which is interesting. Of course, there are characters that are British, and then a lot of characters that are European or from the Middle East. So it's very, very cosmopolitan. After the murder takes place, they get stranded out in the snow, and so the train can't move for a couple days, and that's how Poirot solves the mystery. It's so good. Again, if you haven't read this, I am so jealous because I wish I were you and could go back and read this book for the first time. If anyone is curious about these particular editions by Barnes & Noble Classics, I will show you some close-up shots because I really love them, and they were kind of the reason I wanted to make this video as well. I have tried for a long time to track down a folio edition of just any of Agatha Christie's books, but they're really expensive. They sell out really quickly. I think the only one on Folio's website currently is Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I'm so happy that I found these at Barnes & Noble. They were relatively inexpensive, considering that the trade market paperbacks are usually like $15 or $16. These were only $20, and they feature multiple novels. Death in the Nile also has the ABC murders, Five Little Pigs, again, which are some of her best. And then The Murder on the Orient Express also has The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, which is great, and Curtin, Poirot's Last Case. There's also this edition that features And Then There Were None and includes The Cricket House and Endless Night, so 3 of Agatha Christie's most popular standalone novels. The thing I really like about these Barnes & Noble editions too is that they have the exact same font and text from the William Morrow editions, so these trade paperbacks. So if you are a fan of reading these ones, I think you will really appreciate the Barnes & Noble Classics edition. So there you have it, everyone. Thank you again for joining me for my countdown of my top 10 favorite Poirot mysteries. I just love Poirot. I love this character so much. It's hard for me to let go and say goodbye to him because I have always gone to Poirot when I had a reading slump, or if I just finished a really heavy classic, I would treat myself to a Poirot novel. So I'm looking forward to moving on to Miss Marple. I have never read any Miss Marple, but just in my heart of hearts, I know that I will not love her as much as I love Poirot. Thank you, everyone. And again, I do highly recommend that autobiography by Lucy Worsley. It's fantastic. I just love Agatha Christie now. I really appreciate her a lot more than I ever did. She is by far one of the best writers of all time, and there's a reason for that, because she was the best.